Welcome to Life Stories. Sometimes, life brings us the most unexpected connections. Logan Carter, a wealthy but lonely man, had long lost the warmth of family, until a stormy night changed everything. After a terrible car accident, he was saved by a young girl named Sadie, a stranger who carried a mysterious ring engraved with his late wife's name. As their lives became intertwined, shocking truths unraveled, leading to a journey of love, healing, and second chances. Stay with us as we uncover this heartwarming story. Subscribe now to Life Stories and let's begin today's journey. The rain lashed against the towering glass windows of Logan Carter's penthouse, each drop a relentless drumbeat against the silence he had carefully maintained for years. The vast apartment, a masterpiece of modern design, was all sharp edges and muted grays, its sterility a reflection of his own existence, calculated, controlled, and utterly devoid of warmth. A gust of wind slipped through a slightly open window, rustling the edge of a forgotten photograph on the coffee table. Logan's gaze flickered toward it, his jaw tightening as if bracing against an unseen force. The image, though slightly curled at the edges, was still vibrant. Lauren, his late wife, stood beneath the golden Texas sun, her curls caught mid-motion, her smile unguarded and full of life. He stared at the photo but never reached for it. He never did. Instead, he poured himself a whiskey, the amber liquid swirling in the glass as he settled into the leather armchair by the window. Below, the city of New York stretched endlessly, its skyline illuminated by the hum of a million lives still moving forward. He wondered if any of them had ever felt as lost as he did. Tonight marked another anniversary, of what? He refused to name. The weight of it pressed against his chest, as heavy as the memories he had long tried to suppress. Lauren's voice drifted through his mind, as clear as if she were standing beside him. "You're stronger than you think." Logan, his lips curled in a bitter half-smile. "Am I?" he muttered to the empty room. The whiskey burned as it slid down his throat, but it did nothing to dull the ache buried deep within him. A suffocating restlessness crept through him. He needed air, movement, escape. Tossing his glass onto the marble counter, he grabbed his car keys and stepped out into the storm, the icy rain slapping against his skin as if punishing him for something unspoken. He didn't bother with an umbrella, he never cared for shields. The sleek black sports car roared to life as he sped onto the wet streets, the city lights reflecting in fractured patterns on the pavement. Driving had always cleared his mind, or at least dulled it. The radio played softly, an old jazz tune that made his fingers twitch on the dial. Lauren used to hum along to this song. He reached to turn it off, but hesitated, letting the melody linger, haunting and familiar. Unbidden, memories surfaced. Lauren barefoot in their kitchen, twirling with a laugh as she stirred pancake batter. The way she'd tease him for his obsession with schedules and numbers. The way she made every corner of their home feel like a sanctuary. His throat tightened. He didn't see the curve in the road until it was too late. The tires screeched against the slick pavement as he fought for control, the world blurring into streaks of rain and headlights. A sickening crunch of metal and glass tore through the night. And then, silence. Logan's vision swam as he tried to move, but the seat belt pinned him in place, his ribs throbbing from the impact. The acrid scent of gasoline filled the air, mingling with the metallic tang of blood on his lips. A voice cut through the haze, young and urgent. Hey, mister, can you hear me?" He blinked, forcing his gaze to focus. A figure emerged through the rain, a girl, small but wiry, her dark eyes sharp with determination. "Stay still," she ordered, her voice steadier than he expected. This thing could go up any second. She didn't wait for his response. With surprising strength for someone her size, she yanked at the door handle, her fingers slipping against the crumpled metal. She cursed under her breath before grabbing a piece of debris, wedging it into the frame. With a grunt, she heaved. The door groaned in protest before finally giving way. "Come on, move." Pain shot through Logan's side as he forced himself forward, his body protesting with every inch. But the urgency in her voice propelled him onward. As soon as they stumbled away from the wreckage, a loud boom split the night air. Flames engulfed the car, sending heat rippling through the rain. The girl flinched but didn't let go of his arm, steadying him as he swayed. The last thing Logan saw before the darkness pulled him under was the girl's face, dirt-streaked, determined, and strangely familiar. Then everything faded to black. Logan's first sensation was warmth, not the suffocating heat of the burning car, but a softer, more distant warmth, like sunlight filtering through old curtains. His body ached, his ribs felt like they had been trampled, and a dull throbbing settled in his skull. He blinked against the dim light, his vision hazy as the world swam into focus. The ceiling above him wasn't sterile white like a hospital's. It was old, stained in places, with a flickering bulb casting weak shadows across the room. The faint scent of something unfamiliar lingered in the air, dust, damp wood, and something slightly sweet. His throat was dry, his voice hoarse. "Where? You're awake." The voice came from his right, steady and sharp, but with a quiet wariness beneath it. Logan turned his head, wincing at the pull of his injuries. A girl sat cross-legged in a worn chair by the window, watching him. She was young, maybe 10, 11 at most, her frame small but tense, as though she was ready to bolt at any second. Her dark hair fell in uneven waves around her face, and her clothes were old, too big for her, as if they had belonged to someone else before. He struggled to sit up, pain lancing through his side. "What happened?" The girl leaned forward, gripping the armrest of the chair. "You crashed," she said matter-of-factly. "Your car was on fire. I pulled you out before it got worse." The words hung in the air, their simplicity making them even more unbelievable. Logan frowned, studying her. "You saved me." She shrugged as if it didn't matter. "Someone had to." His eyes drifted past her, toward the window. The storm was still raging outside, faint flashes of lightning illuminating the distant skyline. He tried to piece together what had happened, the crash, the flames, her voice cutting through the chaos, but his thoughts felt sluggish, disjointed. A faint beeping sound caught his attention. He looked down at his arm, where an IV needle was taped to his skin. Not a hospital, but someone had cared enough to tend to his wounds. His gaze returned to the girl, studying her more closely now. There was something off about her, something beyond the way she sat, too still, too guarded. His eyes flickered to the silver chain around her neck. At first, it seemed unremarkable, but then, he saw the small ring dangling from it. His breath caught. The band was simple, slightly worn from time, but unmistakable. The engraving was faint, but as the light hit the silver just right, the letters became clear. Lauren Mitchell. The air left his lungs in a slow, measured exhale. His wife's name. His gaze snapped back to the girl, his voice quieter now but edged with something new. "Where did you get that?" The girl's hand shot up, curling protectively around the ring. Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" Logan's chest tightened, a storm of emotions clashing inside him. "Because that was my wife's name." The room seemed to shrink as the girl's fingers tightened around the ring. Her dark eyes locked onto his, unreadable but filled with something sharp, something like suspicion. "Your wife?" she echoed, as if testing the words. Logan nodded slowly, his pulse drumming in his ears. "Lauren Mitchell Carter," he said, watching for a reaction. "That was her maiden name." The girl's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked down, her fingers absently tracing the ridges of the band as though she had done it 1,000 times before. "It's mine," she finally said. "I've had it for as long as I can remember." Logan exhaled, steadying himself against the rush of emotions threatening to unmoor him. His logical mind tried to reason through it. A coincidence, perhaps? Someone else with the same name? No, not with that ring. He had seen it before. Lauren had kept it in a small velvet pouch, tucked away with a handful of other sentimental keepsakes. She never wore it, but she never let it go either. Once, he had asked her why. It belonged to someone important. She had said, "Someone I lost." A heaviness settled in his chest as he studied the girl again. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, as if debating whether to answer, before finally muttering, "Sadie, Sadie," he repeated, the name unfamiliar yet oddly fitting. "Where are your parents?" Something in her expression shifted. Closing off, she leaned back in her chair, her arms crossing tightly over her chest. Gone. Gone where? Just, gone. The edge in her voice made it clear she had no intention of explaining further. Logan's mind spun. His body ached. His thoughts tangled with exhaustion. But one fact remained glaringly clear: this girl, this stranger who had saved his life, was somehow connected to his wife. But how? He glanced around the room, noticing the peeling wallpaper, the worn-out furniture, the small pile of blankets crumpled in the corner. This wasn't a home, it was a place someone had been surviving in. Not living. Sadie shifted under his gaze. Look, you don't owe me anything, she said, her tone edged with discomfort. I found you. I pulled you out. That's it. Logan exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. That's not it, he said, his voice quiet but firm. That ring, my wife's name, it's not a coincidence. There's more to this. Sadie stood abruptly. I don't know what you want from me, she said, her voice harder now, more defensive. I don't have answers. Logan stared at her, his mind whirring with questions. But before he could say another word, she turned and walked toward the door. You should rest, she muttered over her shoulder. Then, she was gone, leaving Logan alone with the weight of something he didn't yet understand, but desperately needed to. Logan lay awake long after Sadie left the room. The dim light flickered, casting shifting shadows on the cracked ceiling. His ribs ached with every breath. But his mind was far too restless to care. The ring, the name, the girl. It wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. The thought burrowed deep inside him, gnawing at his exhaustion. Lauren had been a woman of secrets. Always careful with the past she refused to discuss. But Logan had never pressed her, not when she looked at him with those pleading eyes. As if asking him to let her keep just one thing for herself. He should have asked. He should have known. Morning arrived in a slow wash of pale light filtering through the thin curtains. Logan pushed himself up with a wince, his body protesting every movement. He needed answers, and he wasn't going to get them by lying in bed. He found Sadie in the small, cluttered kitchen, standing on her tiptoes to reach a can from the top shelf. She froze when she saw him, lowering herself back down, the can slipping slightly in her grasp. You shouldn't be up, she muttered, avoiding his gaze. Logan ignored the comment. I need to know, he said. Sadie sighed, placing the can down on the counter. Know what? Where you're from. Who took care of you? Who gave you that ring? Her jaw tightened. I told you. I don't remember. But you remember the ring. Something flickered in her eyes. Something close to frustration, or fear. Yeah, I remember the ring. I remember having it for as long as I can remember anything. Logan exhaled slowly, choosing his next words carefully. Sadie, I want to run a DNA test. Her entire body stiffened. What? A simple test, he continued. I just need a sample. It's not going to change anything. Not going to change anything? Her voice was sharp now, a bitterness creeping into it. You think I need some test to tell me who I am? Logan held her gaze, steady and unyielding. I think you deserve to know. Sadie stared at him for a long moment, her fingers curling and uncurling at her sides. Then, with a barely perceptible nod, she whispered, Fine. 2 days later, the results arrived. Logan sat at his desk, staring at the sealed envelope. His heart pounded, a part of him terrified of what he was about to confirm. With careful hands, he tore it open. The words blurred together at first, but his eyes locked onto the one line that mattered most. Probability of relationship, 99.9%. Logan exhaled shakily. Sadie was Lauren's daughter, his stepdaughter, and she had spent her entire life never knowing who she truly was. Logan sat in stunned silence, the DNA test results clutched in his hands. The weight of the truth settled over him like a tidal wave, powerful, unrelenting. Sadie wasn't just a lost girl with a familiar ring. She was Lauren's daughter, and that meant she was his family. He exhaled, steadying himself before standing. He needed to tell her. She deserved to hear it from him. Face to face, he found her in the garden behind the small house, sitting cross-legged in the damp grass. She was pulling at the weeds absent-mindedly, her expression unreadable. Sadie, he called softly. She turned, eyes wary as she studied the envelope in his hand. She didn't ask. She already knew. Logan sat beside her, ignoring the sharp protest from his ribs. He hesitated for a moment, then set the papers down between them. It's official, he said. You're Lauren's daughter. Sadie's fingers twitched in her lap. But she said nothing. Logan watched her carefully. I don't know what happened before. How you ended up alone. Or why Lauren never told me. But I do know that this. He gestured between them. This changes things. Sadie let out a breath, her fingers curling around a blade of grass. Changes things how? It means you're not alone anymore. Logan said simply. She scoffed. You say that now. But what if you don't want me around? What if I? She stopped herself, shaking her head. I've been on my own for a long time. Logan studied her, his chest tightening. This girl, his stepdaughter, had spent her entire life carrying burdens she never should have had to bear. I want you around, he said, his voice quiet but firm. Your family, Sadie, and family doesn't walk away. She bit her lip, eyes darting to the test results. I don't know how to do this. She admitted. I don't know how to be someone's kid. Logan's throat tightened. Then we figure it out together. For the first time, something in her expression softened. Not trust, not yet. But the tiniest crack in the wall she had built around herself. She looked back at the grass, her fingers tracing invisible patterns in the dirt. Lauren, she said, testing the name on her tongue. I don't remember her. Logan's heart ached, but he offered a small smile. I do. She glanced up at him. What was she like? 1,000 memories rushed forward. Lauren's laughter, her kindness, the way she made even the coldest days feel warm. She was stubborn, Logan said, his smile turning wistful. And smart. And she loved fiercely. She would have loved you. Sadie. I know she would have. Sadie swallowed hard, blinking quickly. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she asked, will you tell me about her? Logan nodded. Yeah, he said. I'll tell you everything. The days that followed were quiet but meaningful. Logan and Sadie slowly found their rhythm, learning how to exist in each other's world. It wasn't always easy. Sadie was still cautious, still hesitant to believe she had a place in his life. But Logan was patient, proving with every small action that he wasn't going anywhere. He told her stories about Lauren, about the way she loved sunflowers, how she would hum off key when she cooked, and how she always believed in second chances. For the first time, Sadie had a connection to the mother she had never known. And with each memory Logan shared, she began to feel less like a stranger and more like a daughter. One afternoon, they stood in the garden together, planting daisies beside the marigolds Lauren had once loved. As Sadie pressed a seed into the soil, she glanced up at Logan. Do you think she'd be proud of me? She asked. Logan looked at her, at the strength in her small frame, the quiet resilience in her eyes. I know she would be, he said. Sadie smiled then, a real, unguarded smile, and for the first time, Logan saw not just a lost girl, but his daughter. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft golds and pinks, Logan realized something. The mansion that had once felt empty was now a home. Not because of its size or grandeur, but because of the girl standing beside him. Because family wasn't just about blood. It was about choosing each other. And he chose Sadie, just as she, finally, chose him. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to Life Stories for more inspiring videos.